It was a surprise. In fact, officials here at the Pentagon we were under strict orders not to report the trip until the president was wheels down and on the ground in Baghdad. This comes after the president received a lot of criticism for not visiting a combat zone in Iraq or Afghanistan since taking office. The president now landing in Iraq, where over 5,000 American troops are deployed and will deploy and stay to fight ISIS in the coming weeks and months. There's no plans on the books to have them leave the country. Obviously, just last week, the president announced he was pulling all 2,000 troops out of neighboring Syria, but the troops in Iraq will stay. In fact, there are U.S. Army artillery units on the border with Syria that are shelling ISIS around the clock in ISIS's last known city called Hajin, and that continues. So the president here responding to critics, perhaps, visiting Iraq and those forces to show American troops that his commander-in-chief is with them, Dana.
So they went to Al Assad Air Base, and I wonder if you could tell me a little bit about that. I mean, I remember being there, I think, in '07 with President George W. Bush, but this was really like the place where the surge was really important, as I recall.
Correct. Al Assad Air Base is in western Iraq. It's in Anbar province, as you mentioned, the site of some fierce fighting during the height of the Iraq War, where U.S. Marines primarily were based and U.S. Special Operations Forces. But really, this trip from the president just wants to show the troops, wants to show, that he's listening perhaps to some of the criticism. He's there to show support. Perhaps we should have been tipped off, Dana, when just a few days ago on Christmas Eve, the government of Iraq issued a statement over Twitter saying that it was making Christmas a national holiday in Iraq, a majority Muslim nation, of course. Dana.
Yes, so looking back, I mean, I noticed that tweet, and of course that was welcome news for Christians in Iraq for sure. Do you think that the president will be meeting with any Iraqi officials while he is there?
Well, past this prologue, Dana, that is certainly on the agenda. He will meet with top U.S. military officials and officers on the ground in Iraq, as well as his Iraqi counterparts. Of course, there was an election recently in Iraq, and there's a new prime minister, so perhaps the president will be meeting him because, of course, there's a lot of tensions in the region. You have, in neighboring Iran, forces that are trying to gain influence, gain sway in Baghdad, and certainly President Trump would want to keep the government in Baghdad firmly in the United States camp, Dana.
Let's bring back Chris Stirewalt. Thank you, Lucas. I want to bring in Chris Stirewalt just to talk to us a little bit more about this. I think one thing that's a little bit different about this trip is that the president took the first lady with him. And you can see in the pictures there, always the troops love to see the commander-in-chief, doesn't matter who it is. They love the visit. But this comes at a time where there's some question about what is the mission? Where do we go from here? And the Iraqis, certainly as Lucas Tomlinson was saying, trying to make a go of it, saying, look, we've got new leadership here. We're trying to do the right thing. We're trying to rebuff Iran. But, we might need your help, sir.
Well, this presents a very unique opportunity for the military and for the senior brass to have an opportunity to influence the president. We know how his decision to yank the troops out of Syria came about, which was he was convinced by Erdogan, the ruler in Turkey. After a phone conversation between the two, it's reported that Trump says, "Okay, I'm going to yank these folks out, and then Turkey's going to do what they will in the region." And he probably liked that because he was under some political heat. Now he's going to hear, and has been hearing, I'm sure already in preparation for this trip and while he's there, from the military that has a decidedly different point of view.
Chris, this just coming in, and I'm sorry to read it off on my phone, but that's how you get things these days. This coming in, reported by the AP, that President Donald Trump in Iraq for that unannounced visit that we're just breaking here, he says while he's there, quote, he has no plans at all to remove U.S. troops from the country. And so if you are concerned about ISIS and the potential for a resurgence, or the concern about any instability and that possibility of Iran's influence, you might be glad to hear that the president says that's not on the cards right now.
Well, that's right, and especially if you're one of our allies in the region, that would be good to hear, because the abruptness with which the Syria move came, and without consultation with anybody except for Erdogan, apparently, rattled a lot of nerves among our allies. What's Trump doing? What's the United States doing? So him saying, no, we may be leaving Syria behind, but we're going to stay with our mission in Iraq and try to provide stability there, because, of course, over the past two presidencies, the very painful lesson about what happens when the United States doesn't keep its commitments is real, and it's impossible to avoid. And if you're a general or that's in contact with the president today, talking to the president today, take him around, you say, remember what happened when Obama did in Iraq what you're doing in Syria, and remember how hard it was to get back to the point where because what a testament. It's safe enough not just for the president, but for the president and his wife to fly in and be there. That's safe. That's pretty safe. That's impressive. And it took a lot of blood and it took a lot of sweat and toil to get things to a point where that was possible again.
And we're just looking there at that photograph of the president and the first lady with the troops there, and the young soldier's face there, smiling ear to ear. She looks like she's beaming. And of course, as I said, they always love a visit from the commander in chief. They are not forgotten in any way.